This is your year to ring in the deals and ring in the keys to your brand new ride during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford. Like a new 2025 Ford F-250 Super Duty with 0% APR for 60 months. Or a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Just $495 a month lease for 36 months with no money down. This is your year, so drive into 2026 the right way during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Good evening, Lobo Nation. Welcome to the Pit Press Live. I'm your host for this evening, Ed Nunez, along with our producer, Eric Moulton. In our first segment, we will talk Lobo football with a former UNM defensive lineman and the current head coach of the Rio Grande Ravens. And in our second segment, we'll have Go Lopes radio personality, Brennan Williams, to talk about Grand Canyon's recruits and who they've signed. I'll be joined with by Eric Moulton in that segment, and there's a chance that Nick Nunez, my son, might join us in that segment. But first things first, our very special guest, as we mentioned, Rio Grande head football coach Christopher Smalls, who played for the Lobos from 2011 to 2016 as a defensive lineman, played for Coach Bob Davie. And this past week, the reason we wanted to have Coach Smalls on is to talk about the Lobo football clinic he attended with Coach Jason Eck. Coach, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. I greatly appreciate it. And proud to be here, man. Thank you guys for everything that you guys do for not only the Lobos, but also the Alumni Association.
You know, Chris, I cover some of your games for the Ravens. So did my son. And Pete Pino, the great athletic director, is still out there. And I think I told you, Coach Pino, all the respect in the world for him. He actually taught me driver's ed, man. He did. He taught me. And I still remember the day that he did it. I still remember that, and at Highland, I coached the freshman team. He coached the freshman team at Albuquerque High, and we beat him one time. And I remember he caught me into a scrimmage at Christmas. He conned me into that, and they beat us. But Pete, he always had this press, javelina. I still remember that, man. That was his call for a press. So Coach Pino, the Raven legend, absolutely all the respect in the world. You've been working for him for a while. But, Chris, what I wanted to talk about first, when you played for New Mexico from 2012 to 2015, you played for Coach Bob Davie. It's a different atmosphere now. And Coach Davie, and I remember when he was hired from Notre Dame, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm a big Lobo fan since 1970, man. I'd listen to when Rocky Long played. I remember listening to those games back then. Tell us a little bit about your experience and coaching for Bob Davie, who did have a 9-4 season. They did go to the New Mexico Bowl and they played Arizona. That triple option was leading the nation in rushing. So Bob Davie did have some success. It didn't translate to the stands. Averaged about 22,000 fans at University Stadium. But talk to us a little bit about your experiences as a New Mexico Lobo.
With Bob Davie, me being a walk-on with Bob Davie throughout those years, they were tough because, with Bob Davie, him coming from, he was at Notre Dame, took a hiatus, for about 10 years where he was working for ESPN, Brett Musburger, and all those legendary announcers along with Coach Davie. He comes in and he he sticks to his guns, like goes along the way. But I feel like a difference between why it didn't really translate from him winning and then to the fans, bringing more fans in. I mean, when's the last time you saw him hanging out with Waka Flocka? You know what I'm saying? Like some of those things that Coach Eck brings around of just embracing the culture, riding in lowriders. And I mean, maybe at that time, especially with his age, he wasn't really big into social media compared to Coach Eck. But there were a lot of times where, you know, us as players were looking into the stands and like, dang, man, you know, like you said, we're going 9-3 right now. You know, I think in my senior year, if we beat Colorado State at home, we go on to play San Diego State in the Mountain West Conference Championship that year between the Mountain Division and the Coast Division. And so it was just like, yo, big game. And look up in the stands. It's just like, man, I don't even know how many people are out there. You know, like it looks like you could pinpoint someone and be like, oh yeah, that's my student. Hey, look, there's Ryan, President Berryman was classmate. We went to the same year, but it's like, oh look, there's Ryan. He's helping. He's in the stands enjoying the game in the student section across the field. So it definitely was a difference because I don't think Coach Davey embraced the New Mexico culture as much as Coach Eck did, especially in his first year. You know, coming from the blue blood of Notre Dame and everything like that.
You know, it's I think you're absolutely right about that. He lived in Scottsdale, Arizona during the offseason, and that's his prerogative. You know, he can live wherever he wants to, but I think I don't know, Chris, that we've had a coach that's embraced Rocky did. Now, Rocky played here. You know, Rocky wasn't from New Mexico, but people remembered when he was the quarterback here. The teams that he had here, I talked to Ian Clark about this all the time. They had a combination of locals, Ian Clark, Nick Spiegel, Hank Baskett, Dontrell Moore, Rodney Ferguson's, the Cook brothers, and then, you know, some other, and the defense was unbelievable. And Lobo fans flocked, 44,000 against New Mexico State. I still remember that. You know, so it could happen. I said to myself, it can happen, right? Now, I remember going last year to New Mexico State, 38,000 or 36 or what, I can't remember what it was, but there was a great crowd for that game. They drew good crowds last game. We're members of the media, so we could sit in the press box. But for the San Diego State game, I said to myself, told my wife, I want to sit in the stands and drink it up. And I remember, the fans actually caused San Diego State to go outside. Procedure. And when's the last time we'd seen that? So just talk to us a little bit about, we'll get to that clinic here in a minute because it's important. I want you to let everybody know how the facility changed since you were there. How's the Coach Eck has just brought a different culture. And again, getting in lowriders, even in the Lobo Nation, right? He's a personality. My friend won a lunch with him about a month ago at Matusi's, and my friend asked me to go, and he's just that personality. And I told him, I said, look, not everybody can do what you do, man, and go in the community and do that. Not everybody's that kind of personality. But from your point of view, talk a little bit about what you've seen. You've been around Lobo football a long time, Coach, a long time, man, in this community. You've seen a lot of coaches come and go. Talk about how Coach Eck has changed this culture in 1 year.
Yeah, so I'm going to sit here and say, with Coach Gonzalez, I wasn't really around here. It was COVID year. I went out to Dallas, so I wasn't really here for Coach Gonzalez. I knew about him, heard great things about him. I wasn't really around. Like, I dabbled every now and then after Coach Gonzalez with I forget his name.
Coach Mendenhall.
Yeah, Coach Mendenhall, being here 1 year. I remember I went down to practice one time thinking it was open practice, alum, and they were like, hey, man, you got to set up a meeting, to come down to practice. Coach Eck, hey, man, come down whenever you guys want. He's like, you're alumni. You're also one of the coaches around here, local coaches. You can always come through. Just embrace any questions that you have. Any coach can come down and talk with anybody. Let us know when you want to come in meetings, film, everything like that. So, like, Coach Eck, he's like we talked about, he's getting in low riders, you know, gone with 60 seconds, little promos type things. But he has not only, I feel like, elevated football as a whole, and I think that's what we really needed, rather than just focusing on UNM. It was just like, hey, who wants to learn more ball? Who wants to come down here and actually talk X's and O's? Because that's the type of guy that Coach Eck is, as you talked about at that lunch. Like, you probably find him on the street and be like, hey, I have a question about this. And he'll be like, oh, hey, like, I got my grease pen in my back pocket. As long as you got a whiteboard, we can draw it up and see how it works. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, stuff like that really elevates the state. And it's just like, hey, he's down for it. Like, he's trying to have our backs. And, like, one of the biggest thing, and I remember I got in a Twitter battle or an X battle, whatever you want to call it right now, but where he doesn't put fault in, like, the fans not showing up. I remember he got a question. That's what made me like, yo, this dude knows what he's talking about. Like, he knows what it is. And it was after they went on the road and lost 2 games straight, and they're like, are you sad about the fans? And he goes, how can I be sad about the fans? That's what happens when you go on the road, lose 2 games straight, and you come back home. He's just like, we got to make sure that we're better. If we're not trying to win, fans aren't going to come out. And then they went on that stretch. I mean, I was working concession stands for Rio Grande football to fundraise, and I'm sitting there and just like how you're saying, like, soaking it all up. Like, it's loud, it's great. We have people just oh man, Lobo football, yeah, going great for it. So stuff like that, I'm like, yes, like, let's embrace that. And I feel like him embracing the culture and his coaches embracing the culture is a huge thing. Because, you know, some people, especially during the Bob Davie era and probably before Bob Davie, a lot of people saw it as a pit stop. I mean, who knows what type of offers that Coach Eck got just this offseason. And for him to stick around and stay, it's just like, hey, man, like, okay, this guy really wants to try and elevate the whole program. This guy's really trying to elevate everything and be all about it. You know, like, that's, you know, New Mexico true, as they say. And that's what he's trying to be.
We're speaking to Rio Grande head football coach Christopher Smalls, a former New Mexico Lobo. And, you know, Chris, I think that's a great explanation. It's kind of funny that the program that had been struggling for so many years to field a winner, to get fans in the stands, all of a sudden, this guy wins 9 games, goes to the Rate Bowl, and the fans and everybody, the community's excited. They're talking about redoing the stadium and the concessions area and the restrooms. We know that stadium has needed work for a long time, and it was dead. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, hey, we got the money. When are we going to start? What are we going to do? The enthusiasm is back, and we didn't know if it would be, but it is. And I think everybody, look, it's a revamped conference now, right? There's 5 teams that are gone. They're going to a bowl game, man. We know they are. We just don't know which one. They're going to a bowl game. There's no question in my mind. Now, they did lose some players. He brought some players in too, man. He brought some you know, they lost the newbie, the rusher, the edge rusher. They lost the tight end Thomas. They're going to miss that. They lost some speed in the running game. But I think what they brought in, I think, and with the conference, you know, revamped, there's no doubt they should be going to a bowl game again. So I think, again, the excitement after 1 year and after the disappointment of Coach Mendenhall, which was disappointing. They had beat Washington State here at home. You know, we thought the program was going to be turning a corner. And then for him to leave after 1 year, that stabbed a lot of people, man, you know, in the heart, right? Because you're like, and you know, and then he said he wasn't interviewed, then he was. And we're like, okay, what's next for this program that had struggled for so long? So Fernando Lobo, and we kind of forget because he was only here for 6 months, he made a great hire in Coach Jason Eck and a great hire in Coach Eric Olin. You know, enough of that, but I wanted to ask you, Chris, you know, you've been gone and you went to the coaching clinic. Tell us a little bit about how the facilities, you mentioned before we got on, how the facilities have changed since you were there. Talk to us a little bit about how the athletes are treated. You know, they've got these protein shakes, and you mentioned different weightlifting and nutrition, different ways to improve football over there. Tell us a little bit about what you saw.
Yeah, so they revamped the flooring over there, actually, and I do believe because they're having that sale this weekend. They did a lot new brand new equipment coming in. Well, when you first walked into the weight room, the door used to be by, like, if you took a left, you didn't have to go through a door in order to go to the locker room. They brought that door forward. So in order for you to go to the locker room or to go into the weight room, you have to go through a door, and then it comes to an impasse. Well, as you continue walking forward, to the left where all the old dumbbells used to be, there's now, a recovery room, and there's even more construction going on, but they got, or their recovery station with shakes, things like that. I don't know what else is going on there. I do believe they're trying to have it to where it leads up to the indoor through that room. So in that way, it's a lot quicker rather than having to go all the way around. But it was completely revamped, doors, straight glass, two doors that you pull open. It was pretty funny to see that they had a bunch of the scooters, like a bunch of the players renting out the scooters, or maybe they had their own scooters, electronic scooters that they put in the hallway right before the lockers and everything like that.
You know what? That's okay. So you look what they're doing, building better equipment, better nutrition. This is a different era than when you played in, for sure. Recovery, that's huge. So they're building a program here. Finally, we could figure. We think the university, Ryan Berryman, who was just named athletic director, Amy Began, Jalen Dominguez. They've got some young people over there, man. We wish Fern Lobo all the best. I was kind of stunned when he left. And look, Coach, we've lost Eddie Nunez, Dave Williams, Bronco Mendenhall, Fern Lobo, Richard Patino. We've Bronco Mendenhall. We've lost a lot, man. But look what we gained. Look at the gains, man. And usually when you lose, you're like, oh shoot. You're thinking, who's next? Who's going to come in here and turn this program around, which needed to be turned around. And you get a guy like Coach Eck, man. And go ahead.
I was to say, one of the great things that, and I was talking with the golden voice of the Lobos, right? The announcer, but
Robert
we were
Porter,
talking, and he was just like, he's like, it's crazy because it's like baseball. If you got that center line, you got your second base, you got your catcher, pitcher, shortstop, second baseman, center fielder. You're gonna have a pretty good team. And that's what I'm mostly excited about. It's like, hey, they brought most of those guys over. You had the center, you had the linebacker, you had the quarterback. I do believe one of the safeties even came over with him. And now all of a sudden they're coming back, running it back for year two. And it's still that center line. And I'm just like, man, you know what? Like this year looks like it's going to be better than last. So I'm very excited about this year. And I think that's what Coach Eck is doing a good job, is he has that center group or center line doing really good and being very successful.
I think, the players that have played for him, they buy into him. They bought into him. They swear by him. And, Coach Mendenhall was a good coach. Coach Gonzalez, what I think what killed him here, Coach, was having to play in Las Vegas. The COVID era killed that program. It did. It really hurt, man. He wasn't able to play here. And Coach Gonzalez, we had him on, a couple of years ago, and he said they couldn't they couldn't ship weights. The heaviest weight they had was 35 pounds, man. And as well as anybody, Coach, you can't develop like that. You can't. And I think that COVID, that year in Vegas, destroyed that program. And I feel bad because Danny was from here, man. We wanted him to succeed. Likable guy. He loved the community. I think if they'd given him, but that's neither here nor there. Can't go back. Someone's saying hi, Ice Baby. Christopher Smalls. Hello, Christopher Smalls. Can you talk about former USC Kyle McDonald, who was an analyst? I'm not familiar with Kyle McDonald. I remember the name. I don't know if you do, Chris, but I remember Bob Davie, of course, as the ABC analyst. But Coach, let's go to the clinic itself. I wanted to lay the groundwork for where you had been from, where your background is. We'll get to Rio Grande football, where you've been there since 2023. After you tell us a little bit about the coaching clinic. And remember, for fans, they're having their spring football game, a lowrider show, and a bunch of other things this weekend at University Stadium. But tell us a little bit about the coaching clinic. There's a couple of pictures. The football clinic that Coach Eck had.
Yeah, so the football clinic was great. We saw practice right before. They gave us a Lobo, they gave us a practice script for, hey, wherever you guys want to go, find a group. We're showing you where they're going to be at. split up and go around. And then at the end of it, we all met in the northeast corner just to talk about what's on the agenda for the day. Grabbed a snack in the third floor, went down to the second team meeting room, announced Coach Eck. And Coach Eck, he came out, he's like, hey, most of the time people are talking forever. He's like, I'm going to keep it short and talk about some of the things that we like to do to basically hold the guys accountable. So he talked about 4 things. He said accountability, what you're supposed to do, and when to do it. Right? He said there's a time when you're supposed to do stuff. You got to know when to do it, when not to do it. Right? That's being accountable. Toughness, how you respond after bad things happen. And Coach Davey, he talked about it as oh crap moments. Like, hey, when that happens, how are you going to respond? Or that above the line, below the line response, how are you going to respond to that? And you got to be tough. You can't show the emotions that you want, because if you don't respond properly, it's going to get even worse. Urgency, they're looking for self-starters, push themselves to be great. And then he talked about grit, effort over a long period of time for a long period goal. Now, I probably got a little bit messed up because I was trying to write it from memory, so I may have messed up a little bit. And so if I did, please don't get at me, Coach Eck. I apologize about that. But those were really great 4 things, and bringing that back to Rio Grande really helps a lot. Like, just hearing about it, like, hey, they're still preaching the same things that we're trying to preach at the high school level, or even the Yaffle level. And after that, they broke up. So that first picture that you showed was the very first coordinator meeting. And so when the offensive coordinator was up, that same exact one. When that offensive coordinator meeting was up, which was in the main team room, I actually went to the DBs and talked over there. We had corners coach, Coach Frank, safeties coach, Rignell, and then Nardo, who's the nickels coach. We were all in the DB room, and we were talking, and they were just going over some stuff, talking about what they like to call, how they align different things. And me being a D-line guy, even though I am a head coach, I was like, man, like DB stuff, like, just goes straight over my head. I'm like, man, just see ball, get ball. Like, that's what we need to do. And they're like, oh, there's a little bit more. And so it was always funny because I was the only D lineman in the room. And Coach Rignell was just like, come on, man, if you peel, or if y'all tackle the quarterback, we ain't got to worry about this. Like, what are you guys doing while we're watching film? So that was really great, because it wasn't like a strict, like, hey, what are you guys doing? It was more like, it was like an open forum. When we were sitting there talking, like, they were like, hey, what do you guys want to see? What do you guys want to talk about? And so all 3 of them were very helpful with just talking ball. And like, that's one of the things that I love going to coaches clinics is like, hey, someone has a great question. It's like, okay, hey, this is what we're doing, rather than just giving us the gibberish that everybody gives us. And so that was one of the good things that I did like about it with the DBs. And then once defense was done, offense went into their meeting room. So offensive line, and me being an offensive line guy, I sat right in there and listened to Coach Booth actually talk, along with Coach Barry. I do believe he's the grad assistant, or maybe an intern, but he was talking while the defense coordinator was having a defensive coordinator meet in the main room. And so we were sitting there talking just about 7-man protection and how they call it, or how different screens that were working, or different powers, and how they may like to motion, or even running different screens off of different runs, and trying to create different trying to use, obviously, manipulation of how people are supposed to act when they're running certain run plays to get them into a good screen. So that was really good.
I'll tell you, all the things you mentioned just there about the formations, they had a lot of success, Chris, with those screens last year, man. They did. Long handoffs, right? Jack Lane and Luke Monga are going to have a battle, man. The Oregon transfer has, we had Ned James, the Lobo football color analyst, on a couple weeks ago, and Jack, there it is. Jude, Luke Moga. That's going to be a great quarterback battle. Moga comes highly recommended, 4-star recruit, and he said in the paper, "I'm coming here to play meaningful football." He was on the opening drive with Jeff Symbieta and JJ Buck and mentioned, he mentioned the NFL. So you get the idea, and Coach Eck brought him in to push Lane, who's his guy. That's his dude, man. And so Moga's going to have to be pretty good. And they had Lobstein last year. James Lobstein as a second quarterback, the running quarterback, did a heck of a job, right? He did. I don't get the idea that Luke Moga's coming in. He wants to start, so that's going to be a battle. I think you're going to have a good eye on. And again, the spring game this Saturday at University Stadium should be real exciting. Chris, a couple more questions. We'll let you go. But you mentioned you're taking good notes. You've been at Rio Grande. You're around. You played for the Duke City Gladiators, man. You and Landrick Brody, back in the day. And that was some entertaining football. I was the voice of the Gladiators in 2017. So I enjoyed that. Now it's the Chupacabras. They changed that. But how do you plan to take this back to your Rio Grande football team and implement some of the you learned at this clinic?
Some of the simpler things, as we all know, at Rio Grande, and that was my first year. There's a lot of kids who play Rio Grande Yaffle football, but don't end up going to Rio Grande High School. And so, like with a bunch of the kids, it's coming in with those basic terms. So then that way, hey, they're coming along with it as well. Or talking about, hey, maybe with Coach X, accountability, like, hey, what shows someone being accountable, right? Getting those terms out to them, so then that way they see it as, oh, okay, this is what it is. Because as of right now, I think other than Coach Menendez, who was before me, we had 3 coaches back to back to back from Menendez. My predecessor.
I know who he is. I just can't.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I know who he is.
But he was here for a year and a half, and then now to me, and it's just like, hey, like it's going, and we're missing those little things of just accountability and getting on top of it, right? And so, like, getting those things about just showing the success of what they had this past year from the year before. What was it? Over 70% of their roster they had to go out and get, because everybody else went into the transfer portal. So it's just like, hey, like, we can do this. We just have to take the time in order to do it. Like, we can build it. It's not going to be in one night, right? As much as I would like that to be, but hey, we can make something great here at Rio Grande, because UNM had those days where they were good back in the day, and same thing with Rio Grande. Like, I talked to some of the old alumni from back in the early 2000s, where it's just like, they were going 7-5, making it to quarters, making it to semifinals, playing against La Cueva and even beating La Cueva, you know what I'm saying? Playing against Rio Rancho in the playoffs, beating Rio Rancho in the playoffs. And it's just like, hey, we can get back there, but we have to believe. And so that's one of the things about it. We talk about getting into the culture. We got South Valley Pride Parade coming up Saturday. It's like, hey, we're marching. We're going to be out there talking with the fans, things like that, seeing what we need to do. And we just need more kids, though, that I'll say that. Like, that's the thing that sucks. Like not everyone's wanting to play, but we're trying to make sure, hey, we string together some wins. Now, all of a sudden, we'll be good to go. Because, the grit, as Coach Eck would say, that's what we're trying to do. That long period of time, that effort over a long period of time for a long goal. Now, he didn't really, I don't believe he went into what was a long period goal, but hey, 2-3 years, from your freshman year to your senior year, you want it to be better. And so putting in that effort all the way through is what's going to make sure that we improve. And that's where that grit has to come back.
Chris, I admire you, man. I had your game last year against Aztec, I believe, and I think it was the first game of the year. And you got some plays there, and some of your guys didn't make the plays when you needed, but I thought you had some talent. There's some talent there at Rio Grande for sure, and I know you're working to build the numbers back up. And my wife, who used to be the CEO of Catholic Charities, we participated in that South Valley Parade. I know Coach Griego real well. I know Coach Pino. I know about that South Valley Pride, man. So hopefully you get the program where you want it to go. We appreciate you joining us tonight. I think you're doing a great job at Rio Grande. And again, thanks for Eric. You got anything for Coach Smalls?
No, man. I think if I did have one last comment or even just a question for you, Coach, is what was the main takeaway from the coaches clinic that you're going to try to implement with your team heading into this year? I know you're trying to kind of reestablish the pride, the belief, but that's kind of what Coach Eck did in year one at UNM. And it's not easy to do because you got to kind of build up those guys' character. You got to find the right fit. But if you took away one main thing from the coaches clinic that you would implement this year with your squad, what would that be?
Make sure they understand it and don't assume, right? And I know that's easy to say, and I know everyone's just like, oh man, that's duh, you know what I'm saying? But I think we get in a lot of times, especially with some of the high school kids, where we look at them and they're like nodding their head and they can regurgitate what we just said back. You know, every high school kid does it. Every kid does it, honestly. And it's just like, okay, well, tell me what that is, and let's play fast. Stop giving them so much for them to think, and just, hey, make a play. Because as Coach Nunes says, like, hey, you got athletes in South Valley, so we need to start taking back some of the like thinking moments and just be like, hey, let's play some ball. Like, go out there and just play.
Yeah, make it simple.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for the answer. Yeah.
Coach Rio Grande head coach Christopher Smalls was a participant in Jason Eck's clinic last week at UNM. We sure appreciate you being our guest, Coach, and we'll be checking in with you, I'm sure, next year with ProView Networks. I'm sure I'll see you somewhere down the line. But once again, thanks for coming on.
Perfect. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, you bet. We'll be back to the Pit Press Live with Brennan Williams after these messages.
This is your year to ring in the deals and ring in the keys to your brand new ride during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford. Like a new 2025 Ford F-250 Super Duty with 0% APR for 60 months. Or a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Just $495 a month lease for 36 months with no money down. This is your year, so drive into 2026 the right way during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Hey, welcome everybody back to the Pit Press. Ed, I always appreciate the guests you get on, man. All of the high school football coaches. I'm glad that Chris Smalls was able to come on, not only talk Lobo football, but kind of just the Albuquerque metro area football, New Mexico athletes. But it's just kind of a testament to what Coach Eck is doing and kind of connecting the roots with where they lay, man, and just kind of bringing them in. So, I mean, just what were your takeaways from that interview before we get to our next guest?
Yeah, Eric, I got to tell you that at Rio Grande, it's been very hard to build a football program there. So that's why I said I got to give it to Christopher. He's really stuck in there. They don't have a lot of numbers. A lot of them go to Atrisco. So I know he's still working. He's trying to build, and he hasn't quit. And, I think better days are ahead for that program. So, and again, he had played at UNM. I wanted everybody to hear what his thoughts were about the facility when he was there, how it is now, what he thinks of Coach Eck. And, Eric, every report we hear about Coach Jason Eck and his staff and the building of the football culture here, and I know you're enthused about it. I know, and think about where we were a year ago or 2 years ago, and look where we are now in just one short year. I think UNM football is on some very solid footing going forward.
Yeah, I think with the anticipation, I also think expectations are a lot higher this year. Coach Eck's second season, but we'll be covering the spring game. I don't know if you plan on going, but I talked to Greg this week. Greg was going to try to stop by and cover it for us, so we'll start ramping up our Lobo football coverage. But now that we're done with football talk, let's jump into some Lobos basketball and Mountain West talk. And we've got a special guest joining us tonight. Not necessarily focusing on Lobo basketball tonight, but we got Brennan Williams with Go Lopes Radio, who covers GCU hoops. Brennan, what's up, man? How are you? You're on mute, sir.
Great. Really good start there. I was going to say, guys, really good to be here because last time I was on, one of the most chaotic weeks that feels like it was 7 months ago when we were in Vegas. It doesn't even, just so much has happened since then. So it's really good to be back on here. Take a deep breath, take some stock at where everybody's at. It still doesn't feel normal going through all this portal stuff, like the new verbiage and all the way this stuff works. Re-signing, it still doesn't feel normal, but I think it's slowly feeling more normal. So excited to be here and chat with you guys about it.
I'm glad you can come on, and I didn't think we'd be still talking about basketball in mid-April, but here we are. Let's take a step back. About a month ago, I had a chance to meet you for the first time. What was your first impression, and how do you think GCU fared in their first round of the Mountain West tournament?
Well, I think from an honest standpoint, I think, the way GCU operates, and I came on here and I told you guys this last summer, they don't, they're not big into kind of gray areas and, C pluses or B minuses. It's kind of like pass or fail for them, how they operate, just with the amount they invest, how much they care about the program. So I think you'd have to call it, I hate using the word failure. It's not, I think that's a little dramatic, but I think if you're just looking at pass or fail, those are your only two options. You would have to call it that, right? They don't make the NCAA tournament. They don't win a game in the Mountain West Conference tournament. Sure, they were right there in the mix and one different regular season game, and maybe they're, a top 2-3 seed. But unfortunately, that's not good enough. And they had an awful stretch to start out that second half against Nevada. And, they had those stretches all year long. In fact, you guys probably would have seen one of them in New Mexico, right? That run in the second half when the Lopes were in the pit and the Lobos pulled away. And listen, part of it's basketball, but part of it is this team did that all year long, and they walked the line, and they unfortunately paid the price for it, which kind of stinks. But that's kind of the harsh reality on it. I think the other thing with it, I was pretty tough on Bryce with his comments after the game. A lot of talk about bounces going, Nevada's way. And so that was one thing I was pretty brutally honest about after the game that I wasn't super stoked about. Was just, I felt like there were other things that could have been talked about and conversed about from that game to take away. But at the end of the day, GCU, they're back at it, running a million miles an hour. As we know, very flush with cash and, making sure that they spend it and get their roster all dialed. So, I guess the show goes on, right? And we're kind of on to next year. So I think going back, though, I think it's a lot of disappointment. I think, it's a weird thing in this GCU bubble is it kind of just went like 0 dark 30 after the loss, right? Like everyone, it kind of is weird where things kind of check out. Like people, I don't think, maybe some people were mad, but I don't think they just kind of checked out. So I think as the fan base continues to grow, you're going to see more and more people, get frustrated when things don't go right, have those high expectations, and I think continue to kind of push the program forward. So excited for that, and love what they've done in the portal so far.
Before we move on to the next kind of portal edition conversation, I would say, what do you, with GCU finishing with this a bye in the Mountain West tournament, do you think they kind of exceeded expectations? Do you think they were I mean, going back to preseason, right? When you were just like super excited, I think everyone around GCU in the program were kind of on cloud nine that, hey, we're a part of a much better conference, more competitive. They've gotten multiple teams into the big dance like in consecutive years. Obviously, this year was different, but beginning of the season, did you think GCU would have ended up where they ended up?
I thought they were going to make the NCAA tournament. I thought the talent was there. I still think the talent was there. That's what I said preseason. And, sure, injuries, everybody has injuries. So I don't know if I really want to even go there and start that conversation. But again, it's just weird because, yes, they're so close, right? Like that Utah State game, they're in it the second to final weekend in a place where nobody won, I think, outside of UNLV. I don't think SDSU got them there. And so they almost won that game, and that would have had them kind of right in that top 2 or 3 mix. And if we recall, that was like a crazy last 2 games, right? Where who's going to get the 1 seed? Everything was really up for grabs there at the end, and GCU could have had their hat kind of in the mix there. Unfortunately, they didn't, but yeah, I think, bigger arenas, everything was a little bit bigger. I think the expectations were higher, and, it's not like I don't want to say like weren't ready, or again, it's a failure, but there were a lot of moments where they kind of checked out, like the Wyoming loss at home. Like, what the heck was that? That was just people mentally checked out. So I think, a lot of the things that we talked about, or that I talked about, called out that I saw this season, I've seen them putting effort into it in the portal, I think, to address some of those things, which is a really good sign. And I think you got to kind of come back around and be optimistic again. I think, going into last year, it's like we don't know anything other than going to the tournament, winning conference tournament. And there's a little ignorance there, right? But GCU was in the mix. They didn't get it done. And that's how this stuff works, right? Like not 368 teams make the NCAA tournament, right? Only I don't know what the numbers this year, because I think they've expanded it, but that's how this stuff works. So you don't get the job done, you don't make it. That's kind of how it goes. So again, it's just a weird, I hate to say I don't really have an answer, but kind of stuck in that gray area,
Brennan, you mentioned some of the things about Grand Canyon going forward. We'll get to the portal here in a minute. Some of the players that I saw, it's like, oh man, New Mexico's had some good signings. Right now, what I looked at with Grand Canyon, wow, it's all I could say. And Coach Olin isn't done yet. And, the key player was, of course, Jake Hall coming back. And I think Hudson Mays is going to be amazing. I really do. He's got an upside, a high upside. But you guys, again, we'll get to the players in a minute. But when I looked, I'm like, okay. But you mentioned Coach Bryce Drew, one of the best coaches around, and in the conference right now, no doubt about it. Now, when some of these games that you felt like they didn't play well, was it playing, coaching? I mean, you mentioned the comments that Coach Drew made. You took issue with that. So during the season, just not the right combination? Here in New Mexico, I thought the Lobos outplayed them. I did. In the second half, New Mexico rolled in the second half. But did you think just the chemistry itself? Coach Drew comes highly regarded, but what did you think overall? Because when I hear you saying that, I've been around the game a long time, man. There's some stuff in there that I kind of want to know.
Yeah, and I think specifically on those comments, I prefaced it, my podcast talked about it for a few minutes. Like, I understand the heat of battle. You're right out of it. That's a feeling they quite frankly haven't had, right, as a staff, to have to go answer those questions and not be up there doing the ticket ceremony. So there's and you got to give them grace, right? It's the heat of battle. It's how it works. But, I think the first thing that was always going to be an issue, right, is they had all those guys that graduated. Tyon obviously made his way up to Gonzaga and was able to get cleared, but they lost so many guys. And so, they brought those guys back 2 years ago. And then unfortunately, you're just going to be rebuilding regardless. So it was going to be an uphill battle, right? Like, you pretty much don't have any camaraderie. You return Mekhi Williams and Caleb Shaw. Really, you're only 2 people that contributed from the year before. So you're kind of building it new. But yeah, I think it was the camaraderie was a big deal. I think you saw, other teams, obviously Utah State, right? Like, it's just unfair. They have those guys, they'll return for forever, right? And, they've got that core. and it works. And that's just such a cheat code in college basketball nowadays. San Diego State, that was up and down sort of season, but they still had some camaraderie. I thought at the end of the season, they started, kind of really showing some signs. And I thought that was some, like, where your guys are going to be, even if they're not maybe playing great. So yeah, I think the camaraderie was an issue. And then I think the other thing was just the offense struggled. Like they finished, I'd have to check KenPom, but at one point, with like 2 weeks left in the season, they were like 161st in offense. I think they ended up finishing around 130 to 132. Just not good enough offensively. That's the bottom line. One of those big things I thought was not having a true point guard. We're going to get into some of those guys, like you said, Ed, and I think they've addressed that, which I think is really exciting if you're a Lopes fan. But they just had moments where they checked out, and I don't know what causes that. Some guys just, I don't know what it was. And then on top of the offense, and then I think the camaraderie were kind of their big issues. And so, when you look at it from a macro standpoint, it feels like two of those three kind of feel already addressed, and we'll see if that third one can get addressed. But I just think, and it was, like I said, it was always going to be tough. You're losing Tyon Grant Foster, goes to Gonzaga, Ray Harrison, Colin Moore, these guys who GCU fans know, just ran out of eligibility, and they went all in on it. And you had to rebuild. So part of it was just kind of the reality of college basketball today that they had to face.
Going forward, I think New Mexico feels pretty good about their prospects for a revamped Mountain West Conference. It's probably going to be a one-bid league for the foreseeable future. Look what it was this year. And you had teams that, that probably should have got a bid that didn't. Yeah. And so now with 5 teams gone, the NCAA has very little respect for the Mountain West Conference. We have to be honest. So now, with 5 teams gone, I thought Grand Canyon was a great addition. UTEP's coming in now, UC Davis. Of course, the Lobos and the Miners had battles way back on the day, man, in the WAC. But UTEP's not the same anymore. They're not. So I think New Mexico feels good about their prospects. What do you think, Grand Canyon? Again, we'll get to these players in a minute, man. I was like, man, I really was. I was impressed. But what do you think Grand Canyon's? What do you think they think their prospects are? I would think they have to be. Coach Drew has to be pretty excited from what the work they've done.
Yeah, I would say, as much as, we just talked and we're maybe a little critical, right? I would say kind of doubt Bryce Drew at your own will, but I would also say doubt the GCU infrastructure at your own will. Like, it's no like secret, right? I mean, everyone kind of chatters about it. You heard Dutcher even make a few comments regarding GCU, and not snobby comments or anything, just reality checks. Like, GCU's got the backing and the finances to make this thing go in a modern college basketball era that requires that. Like, you have to start there. Otherwise you're having to get so Moneyball, right? And it's just hard to sustain that. So I would say doubt Bryce Drew and doubt, more importantly, GCU's infrastructure and the investment that they have in the program at your own will. And I think they came out with purpose in the portal, which sounds really weird, to turn it into like a game, where like you got to come out in the first few minutes and throw a punch. But it felt like they were very pointed in the portal. They've got fantastic recruiters on staff, very well connected, very purposeful, I feel like, in who they went after. And they're obviously still not done. And then they obviously prioritize bringing back, Mackay, F.A., Caleb, obviously the big 3 there, which I think is just really, really important. So they've passed every test with flying colors of this portal season. Unfortunately, I think last time I was here, I said, or last summer when I was here, I said, we trust that this staff can mix the drink with the talents there. I can't quite say that, right? Because 0 for 1, haven't made the tournament in the Mountain West, but I'll tell you what, the talent's really good. They've got a ton of investment, and, Bryce Drew does win games. So I do think it's a mixture that could be something really special, on top of the idea that they've maybe learned some things this last year, you would hope, and they're going to continue to innovate and get better. So we'll see what that looks like. But yeah, I mean, each name that's come in, you can kind of sell yourself on it, and everybody's so different. And I love building out a roster, You maybe get a guy who's a former McDonald's All-American who maybe hasn't been great the last few years, but could pop, right? Who's going to be a veteran, and then you get this young talent in a place who maybe he wasn't optimized. So you start kind of putting your little chess pieces on the board. And I think they've done an incredible job of that. So really looking forward to how it comes together. And the bottom line is FA isn't going to be at campus late August. He's going to be here all summer. And that's a massive add. You've got Mekhi Williams, who's going to be ready to go right now as kind of the team leader. Caleb Shaw, obviously now healthy. He's a guy, you start this stuff out like right away now, instead of last year. It just kind of took a little bit of time, right, to get all those guys together and on campus. So I expect them to be right there. The expectation is going to always be to win their conference and go to the NCAA tournament, regular season and the conference tournament. That's not my opinion. That's, if you had Brian Mueller on the president, he would say that. So I love what they've done so far, and we'll kind of have to see how it comes together. Now, you guys made the point. New Mexico, you can type in their roster outlook on Evan Maya, and it's pretty dang good when you consider everyone they've brought in so far in return. So I think New Mexico's looking like the team to beat, especially with Olin. I just think as a basketball coach, he flexed his muscles, I thought, a little bit this last year. So yeah, an exciting year ahead. And I think 2 more really good GCU New Mexico games staring us down here. I know it's a little bit of ways, but man, really looking forward to it.
Hey, Brennan, you used a term that kind of sat really, really well with me with how GCU approached the portal. And they acted fast, man. I felt like they had back-to-back days of portal announcement, or at least commitment announcements. And I want to start this conversation with, let me backtrack there. With the whole portal conversation and the methodology and how coaches, programs are approaching it, I feel like it's a combination of a few things and how well you do each one. And the number one is going to be retainment, right? Like you have to retain your key pieces, because that and continuity has proven statistically with how rosters are built out. You see that in the highly successful teams trying to build a program, trying to build a scheme under that coach's system, having those players that understand the system play better well in it. Now, with the players that GCU and Bryce Drew were able to retain, probably consider top the Mountain West. And the first one that I'd like you to elaborate more on, because I think he just made a huge leap this year from, I think it's his second year at GCU, but with Mekhi Williams. I mean, how big was it for GCU and Bryce Drew to bring back Mekhi? Because I think he was the first big name to enter the portal. And at that point, you're like, how does this guy not end up at a Power 4 school because of the season that he had? Him announcing to come back, I'm sure GCU forked up the support and the money to keep him there. But how big was it for GCU to get back this type of player?
Yeah, retainment's massive. I think back to college basketball, let's just say mid-2010s, right? Like what would be a way a mid-major would be able to take out a blue blood first round? It was always those teams who start 4 seniors, maybe one guy who's a little crazy. They've played together for 3 years. They're probably maybe local guys. They played AAU together. Like that was always the way to overcome a massive talent advantage, right? Was these guys have played together. We've seen that sadly kind of taken from the mid-majors, right? Like we grew up with so many iconic moments of those teams and those guys who come out of nowhere. And we still get them, but that was always the way to win. And so retainment was key. And it's funny, like even going back to that, right? Like Mekhi Williams had a ton of interest from really big schools. I can tell you that. Like he was going to be highly coveted. I thought he was going to formally enter and then stay in and, go to a bigger school. I just thought for that last year, that was kind of my hunch. And it's funny how not like the emotional side of it, but you're thinking like part of this is just getting momentum in the portal too, right? Like how big was the Jake Hall re-signing for you guys, right? When you just think of momentum, like huge for the program. And if you're a player, you're like, oh wait, I can, I'm going to have the third best defender on me if they've got Tennette and Hall signed. Like the momentum builds, right? So when he announced he was going to enter, that was a tough kind of man, that was a guy kind of probably prioritizing to keep. And then they were able to announce that the day the portal formally opened. He never actually formally entered. He said he was going to intend to enter and brought him back. He was great this year. I thought he made a ton of strides. Now, I think what we thought we were getting, his first year he plays at University of Texas Arlington. He's this freshman, twitchy, shot a ton of threes and shot like 45%. And so the idea was, man, are the Lopes getting this kind of sharpshooter? Now, he hasn't shot the three well at GCU both years. That's just, the bottom line. But I think what we saw this year was a confidence. And when I was talking about this kind of up and down ebbs and flows of level of engagement of the group, I felt Makai was one of those guys who was always straight lined, and he was coming off the bench. He was starting. He was a go-to guy. He was, the third option. He was everything throughout this whole season. I thought he straight lined it the whole time, was confident, was aggressive, even when the shots weren't going in. And I think it all is going to add up, I think, to hopefully a really good year for him. And then I think the big thing with Makai is this last year, him and Jaden, there's our guy, Steve Ivey. Speaking of retainment, lots of retainment over there for him. So congrats to him and the Rams. We love that. The big thing with Makai is him and Jaden just went kind of back and forth, your turn, my turn. And it was something that was talked about a lot in our Discord, I'll tell you that. And he's going to be able to play off ball of Dylan Darling, a true point guard whose pretty much only job, right, that he's known since he's played college basketball. Yes, he scored it when he was at Idaho State, but his job is he gets excited about setting others up. Like, that's what he does. And so I think if you're Makai, you're saying, man, I get to be off ball. I get to have the table set for me. Yes, I get to be on ball, but he had so much creation and playmaking responsibilities. Sometimes it didn't go great. I think that's going to be even more important. He's going to be able to develop and get better. Obviously some continuity, but he's going to have a true point guard playing alongside him. We'll see defensively how that might hold up. Darling's an excellent defender, even though he's only 6'1", two smaller guys out on the floor. But to have a guy that can get him set up, I think is going to also go a long way. So, if things pop, like it's not crazy to think he's going to be in the player of the year conversation for the Mountain West if things really go well with how he played in conference play.
Yeah, I will say that I at points in the season, I think Jaden Henley was receiving a lot of the accolades. He had the highest ceiling of that group, but I thought Makai Williams was the straw that kind of stirred GCU's drink. I thought he was the most consistent player at times. And even in the Mountain West tournament, the one game that we did watch him play, he was the guy that when you needed a bucket, you went to, and he converted, right? He never really had that off night, and he kind of just made up for things. He did the little things right. And without him, GCU wouldn't have been where they were without him. And I think he was coming off the bench early in the season and ended up finding a starting role because he was just that impactful in games. But you mentioned another player that we're going to transition to in Dylan Darling, who I'm just a huge fan of, man. And I was actually really shocked to see that he left St. John's. And then, I think that happened pretty much overnight, and he was committed to GCU, and he was like, what the heck happened there? But this is a huge pickup for GCU, and he might be a little undersized, but this dude is a straight baller, gamer, lefty, shooter, creates off the dribble, but he does have that edge to his game too, where he likes to distribute, he likes to create for others. What does having a true point guard kind of do for this offense next year?
Yeah, no comment on timelines from Go Lopes Radio. This is what this team's needed. GCU had this guy, Javon Blackshear, who was kind of a local legend here. He grew up, his best friends, you guys might be familiar with him. He was best friends with Jalen House and the little Bibby. They all played together at Shadow Mountain. They won 4 state titles here. And it's funny because all 3 of those guys were guards. But Javon and Jalen House were best friends. And Javon was this kind of undersized, guy. Jalen House obviously always had the, kind of the fanfare. But Javon was this like true point guard, did the little things, was not like the loudest guy in the room. And since he's left, they've kind of missed that true point guard. And he was just such a program guy, and everyone speaks so highly of him. And he's just really great. He's actually still around a little bit now, working out with the guys every now and again. But they've missed that. And Dylan Darling brings that to the table. Again, I think the thing that's really hard to explain to people is, and you can just think of this anytime you've even like played basketball in even the most informal setting. We're not going to try to compare the two, but you can just think of this like when you've played with a guy who is a point guard, or you watch guys that are a point guard, it's literally a completely different switch in the brain. Like when you look at a shooting guard or even a guy who wants to create for himself, let's do this. Let's go back to like Jamal Mashburn for you guys, right? Think of his brain, how he's wired, and then think of, I don't know, how your maybe true point guard's been wired, right? Like those are two different like mindsets. And so you need one of those guys whose sole job is like, hey, I'm here to get other people like their shots. And that's what makes me really excited. As like if he's a basketball player, that's what gets him going. And so to have one of those guys, you don't find them a lot in college basketball anymore. And more oftentimes than not at these bigger programs, they're maybe not the starters. You know, they come in off the bench and they play 20 minutes exactly like Darling did. But they're so that you just need them. Like when it's an 8-0 run, you know, GC struggled with this, just giving up runs. Like, where are we going? What are we doing? Like, who's taking the ball? Who's calming us down and getting a shot where we need it? Who's bringing the ball up the court when there's a little bit of pressure? It's just those little things. Dylan Darling's that guy. And the thing I tweeted out, if you look at his profile online, obviously you can kind of watch him and see he's got that feistiness and that edge, but he's a plus defender at 6'1", which is really hard to do, I feel like, in today's college basketball, especially when he was, you know, at St. John's in the Big East. To be a plus defender at that size, at that position, there's not a lot of those guys, because you can go through the portal, right? And you can vet all those guys and say, we need a guy who's a true point guard. You can get them, but you got to find one that can hang his hat up as well on the defensive end. And I think Bryce found that. And he seems like the perfect fit and exactly what this program needs. Everyone else has to be licking their chops right now. I think if you're on GCU's roster, that you've got a guy who is going to walk into every game and his job's going to want to be to set other people up.
He's definitely going to make everybody better. There's no doubt about it. You mentioned the defensive end, and I'm surprised he didn't, Coach Pitino at St. John's, he made that big shot against Kansas, couldn't get him to stay. And again, it's not maybe Coach Pitino. You only got so much NIL money. It's got to go around to everybody. Yeah. And that shot there that he made got downhill, went to the rim, and made a clutch play. So, not only, that's in the background too. You got a guy that's made a big play in closing minutes of an NCAA tournament game, has NCAA tournament experience on the big stage. That helps too. All the other things you mentioned, Mekhi Williams had a great season. But when you put those two together, you got a guy, and you mentioned, they say Dax Hall is like that. I watched highlights of him, Jake's brother, and that he likes to distribute. And Jake Hall made a comment the other day about he likes to get 2 feet in the paint. We know Coach Olin likes those paint touches, likes the rim pressure. He had Albury. I watched tape on him just a little bit. And so, but he's a freshman. He's coming in as a freshman, and I'm looking forward to playing with his brother for sure. But there's others too. We'll get to those signings in a minute. But when you mentioned about Darling and that intelligence, the IQ, he's going to get it. And if you're playing with a guy like that distributes, you're going to get the ball right where you need it, and in your shooting pocket or wherever you need it, he's going to get it to you. And so, that's a huge signing. When I saw that, I'm like, man,
super helpful.
Yeah, no, it is. And there's more, and Eric will get to in a minute. But, when I saw that, I was like, disappointed, not disappointed, but you know what I mean? Like the Lobos did good, but hey, man, these guys did a really good job of getting, like you mentioned, Coach Drew is not going to sit on that season. He's going to, the season last year, he's going to improve. That's what he's always coached. So, Eric, I'll leave it to Eric to get to the other players that GCU signed.
Yeah, man. And where do I start? Because there's a bunch, and I know that you've got a pretty cool segment that you've been running out on Twitter in your impact videos. But I'm going to pull up one of your posts here, just kind of on overall roster kind of development, and just to kind of see. I think you pulled it from Evan Maya. If anyone out there watching, listening wants to go kind of geek out on some of the numbers and analytics, Evan Maya's site is the place to be. But this is kind of the roster outlook for GCU, and Brennan, I'll kind of leave it up to you, man, on how you want to, what order you want to go in. But who are some of the other portal additions that could potentially be like instant impact players for the Lopes next year?
Yeah, I think obviously we talked about Darling. I think, FA is really interesting to get him to return, to have size in mid-major college basketball is really tough. It just is so hard to keep it. If you have it, they're probably going to end up leaving. And FA maybe didn't get a fair shot at last year, gets in super late because of visa issues. He improved a ton throughout the year. He had some slip-ups. Listen, he's a freshman. It's a new style of basketball. He's halfway across the world. Kind of just everything's new. I would expect a big year from FA. I'm really excited to see his development. We've got maybe the best strength coach on the West Coast, Coach Jack. And I just take a look at FA now because he's going to be a totally different player by the time you see him next year, I bet. Obviously, we talked about Mackay. I think the next place I want to go, the really intriguing piece is Blake Barkley. He's a really interesting player because his skill set's something GCU maybe hasn't had in a while. He's this forward. He can pick and pop. He's still tough down low. He doesn't want to just kind of hang out by the 3-point line. A good rebounder. And it's tough to find like a comparison to his game, but he's this tool that I don't think we've seen from GCU. And, most importantly, he's this kind of mobile 6'8" sort of guy, right? Where we saw like a JT Rock. I mean, both games, I think he killed GCU, right? Just those pick and pops. And, you got to come out and cover that. And it's tough to cover. So you got a guy like Barkley who can maybe be a little bit more mobile at 6'8", on the defensive end, but on the offensive end, he can give it right back with the pick and pop, right? So he is a really fascinating piece, in my opinion. I love what he brings to the table. One thing you got to watch with him is he went to Northwestern, didn't do a whole lot there, then went to East Tennessee State, and he popped. I mean, popped. Went crazy this year. Third team all SoCon, I believe. And yeah, just really filled up the box score. So it's one thing to see, maybe how that translates to the Mountain West. I think it should translate pretty well. Maybe some increased facilities, some work. And, I know you guys obviously have followed football. Like the old saying, right, is there's a big jump year 1 to year 2, but the biggest jump, right, is year 2 to year 3. That's the year he's going to be in. So I'm really interested to see how he develops Blake Barkley as this, this tool that Bryce maybe hasn't had, this pick and pop big. Maybe not going to blow anybody away on the defensive end like Nano this year, but a true kind of pick and pop big who can be mobile on the outside, but is also kind of nasty down around the basket. He's super intriguing. The only other guy I'd touch on just because he's a really interesting story is Tyler Barron. I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with him, but he actually played in his final year of high school basketball here in the Valley. My buddy his dad coached him at a small school here in the Valley, and he was about 6'4", 6'5", was a shooting guard. He graduates high school. He goes off to the Navy, gets to the Navy, and all of a sudden grows 6 inches in 1 year. So he goes from this 6'5", 6'4" sort of guard to he's this 6'10" guy now in the Navy. And around 2020, so he's, I think, like 27 now. So I want to get out there. Anybody who's mad about Bullion last year for you guys as a 23-year-old freshman, GCU, you can send them our way, and they can be mad at us for having probably the oldest player in college basketball. But I think around 2021 or 2022, he's in the Navy and his ship's getting worked on, and he goes to play at the local community college. He's like, hey, I grew to 6'10". Then Tulsa recruits him, and he goes to Tulsa and plays 2 years, and now he's going to play at GCU. So I couldn't find him. I think 26, 27 years old, went to the Navy, grew 6 inches, just decided while his ship was getting worked on to go play at the local community college. Tulsa ends up recruiting him. He's this big guy, legit, really good, big body, and now GCU's got him. It's a crazy story. It really is.
We are more than familiar with him. Actually, we previewed him when UNM played Tulsa in the NIT.
Yes.
And he shut down Bullion to some point where like Olin had to go to TJ Rock at some point in the game just because he wasn't as impactful. But I still have the graphic. I'm surprised I didn't change it. But 6.4 points per game. But he also does a really good job on the rebounds. But he's super physical, athletic. But I think that also comes with he's a more mature man, right?
Yeah,
But he sets a lot of screens and he's good at setting up shooters. He's a good passer. So yeah, kind of an underrated addition for GCU. I don't think he's collecting
Totally.
a whole lot of chatter out there, but this is an instant. I think he starts for them probably. You need that 6'9" frame, but he kind of stretches the floor a little bit too because he will go out. I think he took one or two threes against UNM too,
Yep.
which we didn't anticipate. But yeah, an interesting addition. But yeah, we're more than familiar with him. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, just one quick comment on him, and about and I think Eric's right. 27 years old, and you mentioned you have a great strength coach. He's already a grown man strong, right? Grown man, and the setting of the picks is going to be huge, I think. And it's not given enough credit. They talk about coming off picks and off the bounce, but sometimes they forget the screen setters themselves. So I think when I saw that one, that was another one. I'm like, oh man, because I saw the NIT final against Auburn. They won the game. They had the game won. If they bring it in, it's over.
Yeah.
Auburn gets a steal, and they hit the three. Otherwise, that game's over. They win the NIT. And bounces happen. Good bounce, bad bounce. And but that guy there is going to, think about it. Guy's 27 years old, man. 27.
Yep.
And, so grown man, and he's only going to get stronger. He's already strong. That's another, I think, under the radar. You mentioned that, but that's a signing that's really going to help GC.
Well, I mean, you think about it, it's like FA's a legit 7'1". I mean, he is big, FA. Now, he did get pushed around a few times this year. I thought he got more physical as the year wore on, but it's like, we'll see what the lineups look like. But when we're talking, FA at 7'1", and then Brennan coming in at 6'10" as a full adult, that's legit size and strength. And we saw this last year, right? And Evan Maya talked about this a little bit, is just how much size now is dictating college basketball. And so it's fascinating. I think they've done a really good job. They've been very, like you said, Eric, I don't know what that word is, pointed in the portal. And I think that if you're a GCU fan, that has to get you really excited to see a staff listen after, a letdown year, call it whatever you want, but a staff that's taking this serious. They knew what they wanted to do in the portal. They made the list. They're going out and doing it. Yes, it's a little bit easier when you're GCU and you've got the investment, but they're going out and they're doing it. And they're making those adjustments. And like I said, they're still not done. I know the Lobos won't be done either. But things are coming together really well, I think, for the Lopes. And then, it's going to be up to Coach Bryce Drew to stir the drink again. And, it's really exciting.
Well, thanks again for coming on, Brendan. I don't mean to cut this short. I know that we could probably talk GCU hoops or even just Mountain West hoops all night long, but we've got plenty to talk about. We've got a long summer ahead. We plan on getting Mike Cooper on too, from the Scarlet Standard. I know UNLV has retained some key pieces, some key young pieces, and they've added some nice additions from the portal as well. So I think we'll come to you kind of consistently throughout the summer. We'll do some joint shows, all three of us on. Maybe we'll get some other folks on from around the Mountain West and just kind of continue this conversation and keep things going. But thanks for coming on the Pit Press, man. Any final thoughts? Any last things you want to send off with?
No, I think just really excited. This last year, a lot going on GCU world, and to see New Mexico obviously retain Jay Call, Uriah Tenet, and then to see GCU kind of continued investment. I just think we're going to continue to see those two clash in a really awesome way. Two unique fan bases. One, this kind of not necessarily old school, but this ton of tradition, and you've got this kind of GCU new sort of team. I think it's just got to get you really excited for what these two teams are going to be doing over the next few years and the battles. Excited that Olin stayed, excited that Jay Call came back, Uriah Tenet came back as well, and they've added some really good pieces. So, man, it's going to be really good. Hopefully some other people, continue to invest. We see some other teams step up, but yeah, we've got a few months, so we don't need to peak too early and get too excited, but it's hard not to just keep looking at the roster and refreshing Twitter, right? It's this time of the year. So,
and I'll leave you with this thought too for maybe the next show we have on, but Wyoming has retained some
That's what
really
I've been
good
saying.
Pieces, so they kind of add more. Some compelling conversations to that mix. But Ed, any final thoughts from you?
No, Brennan, thanks again for coming on. I think You know what? We're looking for rivals, right? San Diego State's gone. They're out of Colorado State years ago was a rival. Utah State, they're all gone, man. So GCU, logistically in the same region, could be that rival for UNM. And when they come in the pit, be ready. When we go there, we got to be ready because they've got some fans. Hey, you know what, Brennan? I think it's going. I think we're setting the table for GCU. Gosh, it's impressive what they did. Very impressive. I think New Mexico's done some work. Coach Olin's not done yet, but you mentioned those two teams should be considered. I think right now, Wyoming's done some good stuff, but I think New Mexico and GCU are going to be right there, man. And two games, those 2 games next year, I think we're kind of setting the table for it. I know I'm already excited just by what Grand Canyon has done, and New Mexico's not done yet, but those are going to be some great games.
Yeah, my final thought is if you guys could put a word in with the New Mexico Lobo Twitter admin, if we could, I didn't need the J call step back against GCU. Couldn't use the Fresno one for the announcement for him coming back. I mean, we had to use the GCU one, the game clincher. Like, I don't need to see that video anymore. So if we can get that just gone, that'd be great. New season. Yeah, just, oh my gosh, man, he's insane. Gosh, could have used the Fresno one. So maybe a note for the social media admin.
One last simple question from one of our viewers. I don't know if you know any of this or want to speculate, but what is the GCU's estimated NIL budget? Have any idea?
Yeah, I would say GCU's is a lot. I would be very shocked if New Mexico's anywhere close or in the ballpark. Would be my speculation. I think it was definitely the way it was speculated and talked about last year. It seemed like GCU might have been the leader potentially last year. Again, all speculation, not sure. I would imagine, GCU takes this stuff seriously and they want to win. And, they've got a thriving business to, make that happen. Really good partners, Jerry Colangelo, some other people. So, they're positioned well in modern college athletics. I don't think we have to, I don't want to say be weird about it, but it's like, it used to be this thing where it's like, oh, GCU's got a bunch of money, or like High Point, they've got a ton of money right now. Like, it's just kind of how this stuff works. Like, they invest and they've got the money, so they're going to go and get after it. So, I would be very shocked if UNM's was anywhere close to GCU's.
Okay. Well, I'm going to throw a figure at you because I know that like Big East schools, power conferences, 10 million is like what they're budgeting for a roster.
Yeah.
GCU, higher or lower than that?
I don't know about that. Again, it's just speculation. I don't think they would be there. That would be pretty shocking. I don't think they would be there at all. But yeah, I feel like everyone kind of inflates everybody, right? It's like everyone's making weight because it's in everybody's interest to say they're making more money. Every deal I feel like is kind of done differently. So I wouldn't know any sort of numbers. But I'd feel pretty confident saying by and large, they will be the biggest investor probably in the new Mountain West for sure. And I think they might have even been in the old Mountain West, but yeah, they take this stuff seriously and they want to win. They don't, that's how you get from being 2,000 students at a school to, where they're at now with 20,000 in 15 years. It's not by kind of just like moping around. Like they invest and they make plays and they invest in things and try really hard. So yeah, that's probably my answer.
Okay. All right, Brennan, we'll get you back on. I know we're already coming up in an hour and 20 minutes, but I want to thank everyone for tuning into the Pit Press Live tonight. I want to thank Ed for getting your guests, talking Lobo football, spring ball, and for Coach for joining us, and Brennan Williams, Go Lopes Radio. Everyone have a good night. Thanks for tuning in.